So a while ago I made an Ohio State University themed inlay bowl, and it turned out, but it had some issues, and it was mostly with the wood I used for the base. The piece of honey locust I used was really close to the center and developed a pith crack when I was inlaying it, which I glued up and was not a big of a deal, but the wood itself was also kind of an orangish red, and it didn't really contrast very nicely with the Padauk. So the bowl itself was just kind of bland, so I decided that I was going to make a version 2 of this bowl, and I had a little idea on how to make it a little less bland. So at this point, you're probably thinking that I screwed something up horribly. Now, normally I would set one of these to cut on the outside of the shape and the other to cut on the inside, but this time I told it to cut on the line, which would give me an 1/8 inch gap between everything. So this was actually all part of my plan because, like I said, I wanted to make this one a little more elaborate. So we've got a 1/8 inch piece of Wenge here, and we're basically going to line the inside and outside of this O with this, and then inlay that into our bowl bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this in half, and then we'll start cutting little segments and gluing everything together. So for our Wenge border, took a little shortcut here. I've got it glued on to what are the longer sides of our inner part. Now I'm just gonna take this and sand this down flush with the inner part here on the belt sander, and then we'll just glue 4 more small pieces on and repeat that process. I'm not too worried about if I go a little too far and get into that with the sander, because we are going to actually need to sand just a little bit off. The 1/8 inch bit I have cuts just a little bit undersized, so in order to get that to fit in there, we will need to knock off just a little bit off the sides of this, and of course the corners where it'll go into here. So we'll go ahead and get this sanded down and then get our other pieces glued.